distinctly slow at the moment.
We've got to be a bit careful, haven't we? Because Mark Benz would probably have situations where he would have to declare an interest and not be able to actually.
That's right. I mean, one of the areas in which I think that he could help is, of course, he did draw up our design statement.
Yeah.
And at some point, we're going to want that updating, because although we lost the neighbourhood plan, we've always maintained that the design statement stood on its own, and we refer in our planning guidance, for example, to wanting people to comply with it, so it needs to be kept up to date. But you're right, I mean, he could have distinct interests in particular projects or developments which it would be completely inappropriate for him to involve himself or for us to involve him in it. But it is that way round. I mean, if we were aware that he was involved, we wouldn't ask him.
Sure.
And we could always say to him, look, we don't know if you're involved, but if you're involved, will you please say so? Because in that case, we will keep you at arm's length.
We'd have to have a protocol, wouldn't we?
But by the same token, if we end up in a situation by sort of May next year where there's little or no activity around this, then it's probably not going to really take off.
It's not the end of the world.
But we'll see.
Isn't that what we said originally, didn't we? We're going to trial it.
Yeah, exactly so. If it works, it works, and if it doesn't, well, nothing's lost.
We've got a list of names, though.
We've got some names, and it may be that in our sort of day-to-day travels, we bump into people, have conversations, and may be able to say to them, would you be interested in? So there's always the possibility of supplementing this as we go along, but otherwise there's nothing else to report.
Thank you.
There is a letter of complaint.
I wish to make a complaint.
It is only a single letter of complaint on this occasion. However, I could only find, I know I printed it off, but unfortunately I ended up with various things. I think this is one. It's quite a long letter of complaint. I don't know who the author of this is, because that's been redacted. I think, did we all get a copy of the letter?
I don't know. Certainly saw it. It's on
Yes.
the minutes.
Yes,
Yeah.
I thought it should have come out. I mean, we are.
Supporting documents, I think it was.
Yeah, we are very familiar with this issue, and it's the way in which the construction management plan has been, it appears at times almost entirely ignored by the developer and those for whom they are responsible. And this person has then forensically been through all of this and has written to the chief executive of the Vistry Group. This letter was dated some time ago. I'm not aware of whether the author has received any response, but I'm assuming not.
No.
In which case, it seems to me that there are two possible things we could do. One, of course, would be to write to the chief executive of the Vistry Group ourselves and say, we're aware that a parishioner wrote to you with these various concerns, and very disappointed that you appear not to have dealt with it in any way at all. Intimating that we associate ourselves with the sentiment of what is expressed here, and would like him to get a reply and for us to be copied into it. The other thing might be to approach the author and ask the author whether this letter was provided to NNC as well. And if it was, has he had a response with a view to doing a similar thing and chasing up NNC? And if it hasn't gone to NNC, to ask him whether he would like us to copy it to an NC and push them to respond to it. Because it does certainly concern me that construction management plans are put together for these major developments, presumably on the basis that they are needed, and presumably with the thought that they are supposed to be complied with.
Yeah.
And if they are simply being ignored, then that's very bad news for the developers. But what's equally bad news is if there are no consequences for them for failing to comply. And therefore that needs to be taken up with MNC. I said, well, you seem to be quick off the mark this evening on almost everything.
Well, I like both ideas. I think we've got to support our parishioner. We've all been concerned by, we are aware of complaints. So I think we should contact that person, see if they've had a reply, write to the chief executive and CC Nov Planning.
Anybody have any contrary or additional views?
Certainly not contrary.
We need to get money.
Okay, Lisa, if you could contact the person concerned along the lines that we just discussed and just keep me updated, we'll go from there.
Okay, yeah.
Which brings us, just before 9 p.m, to any other relevant matters for report only.
I don't have any.
No.
No. Sadly, I do. I don't know whether anybody picked up on it, if they were looking at the planning application in respect of the Beerton land. But the Beertons also are involved with Stoke Farm Dairy Hill. That's the wrong way around, Dairy Farm Stoke Hill. Even that site was designated in the Royal Northumbrian Flaxton Plan for 20 dwellings and has been conspicuous in its absence from anything ever since. But I read in that documentation that the issues that have prevented an application for that site have been resolved, and it looks extremely likely that there will therefore be an application for those 20 dwellings shortly. Given that it is on a site allocated in the RNOTP, and given that that is still the only extant planning document of relevance, it does seem to me that it will come in with a strong possibility of being granted, provided they don't make sort of a complete hash of the way they put it together. But the principle is established. So I flag it up so we can keep an eye open for it. But it also means that if that goes through, then it's 130 houses off Cottesstock Road, 130 off St Christopher's Drive, potentially 53/62 off Stoke Doyle Road, possibly this 20. That ignores, of course, any other small windfall sites. And still waiting in the wings are potential planning applications in respect of land off Herne Road and land off Benfield Road. And there is currently certainly no neighbourhood plan that can stop it. So we then become pretty reliant upon the local plan part 2, which does carry some weight because of where it's got to in the system, although it would carry none if the inspector rejects it. And of course we are aware that North Northamptonshire are going to develop their strategic plan. And you may recall that some time ago we discussed that and the various questions that they were posing in connection with it, to which we responded. Since which time, I must confess, I've seen nothing more. I haven't really gone looking for it. But I just thought we ought to bear that in mind, because it seems as if this inexorable development of land Downhill continues. And of course, there is still one further part of the site between Ashton Road and Herne Road, which was allocated for development in RNOTP for some 50 houses, but which was in multiple ownership and has never yet therefore come forward. But that would be a similar scenario to the Stoke Hill situation, in as much as if they get it in before RNOTP is replaced, if it happens, they're probably pushing it an open door as well.
Be nice to say stop.
Which almost beggars belief as to where that might lead us in terms of the number of houses in this town and the infrastructure issues and the like. But there we go. That
Thank you.
took us just beyond 9 o'clock. I will declare the meeting closed.
Well, thank you very much. On that note.